Can anyone afford a home anymore? Seriously. Uh, I'm looking at a condo on Zillow. I live in the Seattle area, but a 40-year-old condo on Zillow, like a 3-bed, 2-bath condo, they're asking like $900,000 for it. So that's I don't know who's going to feel good about buying that. The mortgage payment was nearly $7,000 a month for that. So, again, I know I live in a more expensive area than most people. If you live on the coast, everything's going to be more inflated. So Washington, Oregon, California, New York, Florida to a certain degree, Massachusetts, everything on the coast is usually more expensive. So if you live in the middle of the country, the housing prices are going to be less, but probably your salary is going to be, or the average salary is going to be a lot lower too. I just think, I was born here, so I haven't left yet. And like all my family is generally in this area, so it's a little bit harder to just leave. But I don't see a path like ever to getting to be able to afford $1 million condo, or if you're talking about a nice home, you're talking close to $1 million for a not a fancy home, not a luxury home, just kind of a nice home, like 2,000 square feet, relatively nice, not fancy, not any of the fancy upgrades or anything, and not on a big piece of land. You're kind of just right next to someone else. It's like suburban America, depending on where you live. If you live further out, it might be a little bit less money, but still, I think you're going to be spending at the low end $600,000 for kind of a house that's not that nice, but it's livable. And at the high end, well over $1 million. And even like a $2 million house doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get like a really great house. It's going to be probably a nice newer house on it might be on it's not going to be on an acre. You're probably going to be next to other houses in a development. It's going to be modern. It's going to be new. It might have some nicer finishes, but it's $2 million or 1.5 million. So I don't know. If you make 100 grand or even 150 grand or really even 200,000, I just don't know how you can afford a mortgage payment of over $10,000 a month. That would, essentially eat all of your salary or all of your take-home pay, especially after taxes. If you make $150,000 a year, you're making, what is that, like $12,000, $13,000 a month. After tax and just normal life expenses, you can't probably really pay more than $6,000 a month in a mortgage payment. But $6,000 a month in a mortgage payment literally does not buy you any house here. It doesn't. If you make 100 grand, you can qualify for maybe a house that's 400 or 500,000. The issue with that is there is literally no home that is selling for $400,000. If it is a total shithole. Like it is not nice. It is like maybe a manufactured home that's old, that needs repairs, that's like terrible, that no one would really want to live in. And then plus you have to go into debt and mortgage that for 30 years. Most people would have to, right? To live in a place that's really not that nice. So what do people do? I don't know. I think a lot of people are choosing to pay $2,500 a month to live in an apartment, kind of a basic apartment. Maybe one that's a little bit newer, but if you're paying for a newer type construction apartment in a decent area, it's probably going to be closer to $3,000 and maybe even more if it's a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom. Even the bare bone kind of basic 1-bedroom or studio, I mean, it's going to be $1,500, I would think, at a minimum. Like that's kind of the floor. You could get a roommate and everything, but a studio is usually just for one person, or a 1-bedroom is probably for one person, and it's probably around $1,500 in the general Seattle area. So for me, it's just like, hey, you either have to find a way to make more money and justify living in such a high cost of living area, which I think most people, that's what they are faced with. If I'm going to live in a high cost of living area, I have to make a lot of money. Because if I do not make a unusually high amount of money in this high cost of living area, Seattle, Los Angeles, California, San Francisco, New York, Boston, if you happen to be in one of these cities and you are working a job which you are making just a normal income, it might feel like it's a decent amount of money, 100 grand, 150 grand, but really how far does that get you where you're living? Does it allow you to buy a house? No. Does it allow you to feel comfortable? Not really. Can you get ahead? How are you going to get ahead in that area making that amount of money? You're probably not. So that's the issue I think a lot of people face when they live in these big cities is, if I'm going to stay here, I have to find a way to probably double my income or triple my income so that I can justify living in this very expensive area. Because you just can't afford anything otherwise. You're gonna be a lifetime renter or a lifetime, apartment dweller, because you're never gonna be able to save up enough scratch to put a down payment down and then comfortably pay a $6,000, $10,000 mortgage payment. Who can do that on a normal income? You might make $10,000 a month, but that's your total pay, right? And taxes come out, food comes out, insurance comes out, transportation comes out. Do you have any credit card debt? Do you have a car payment? Do you have health things, maybe a doctor checkup? Are you doing any sort of discretionary spending, like going to a restaurant ever? Buying clothes, maybe going to like 1 or 2 entertainment things a month. You can cut all that stuff out, but it's really not going to change much. If you make 10 grand and your mortgage payment is supposed to be 15 grand or 12 grand or 8 grand, you could stop eating. You could just really do the basics, but there's just not enough money coming in to justify having a $6,000 or an $8,000 mortgage payment. So a lot of people they're saying, I can't do this. If you do live in Seattle or like Portland or San Francisco or a city where it's really, really expensive just for a basic house, let me know how you're doing it. Do you have I'm sure a lot of these people, maybe they have a family or they have a higher paying job that pays them well. Otherwise you just couldn't afford it. I know a lot of people are getting down payments from their parents maybe, or from their family to help get into the house. But even after you get into it, how are you affording a $10,000 a month mortgage payment or a $7,000 a month mortgage payment? You have to be making, well over $150,000 to comfortably do that, I would think. And I just don't know I don't think everyone, of course, there's always people that make like a healthy amount of money, but if you just look at the median income, how is someone even, they're basically barely affording rent, and we're not talking about home ownership. So how do you really afford, or how do you look down into the future and say, how am I ever going to be able to afford a house? The mortgage payment is more than my take home pay, right? So it just doesn't make sense. So you guys let me know. I mean, I know if you live in the middle of the country, it's more reasonable. Like you can probably get a house payment of $2,500 a month, for a house that's like $300,000 or $400,000. That could be feasible for a lot of people. But I'm talking about bigger cities or on the coast. I think if you're not making 200 grand, you probably have to really ask yourself, what am I doing? Because I'm never gonna be able to afford the prices of stuff here. You're always just gonna be a renter, and you're not gonna be able to ever own anything, because you just simply can't afford it. You'd be incredibly house poor and you'd have nothing left over. So let me know what you think on that, and we'll see you on the next one.